On the 1st of July 1942, the defense of Sevastopol had not yet ended, but the commander of the Black Sea Fleet, Vice Admiral Philip Oktyabrsky, had already sent a radiogram to Moscow requesting permission to evacuate the command. Permission was granted. Several hundred staff officers would be evacuated by aircraft and submarines, and on Cape Khersones, tens of thousands of soldiers, sailors, and wounded would remain, without a general withdrawal plan, without ships, and almost without shells. For many of them, this would end in captivity, starvation, and death. Why did the command still have an escape route, while the ordinary defenders of Sevastopol no longer did? To answer, one must return to October of 1941, to the moment when Manstein's German army broke through the Crimea and approached the city for the first time. On the 29th of October 1941, the German vanguard units of General Erich von Manstein's 11th Army reached Sevastopol's outer defensive line. Behind them lay almost the entire Crimean Peninsula, taken in 2.5 weeks. 3 Soviet armies, the Coastal, the 51st, and the operational group of General Batov, had been cut to pieces, partially destroyed, partially pushed eastward toward Kerch. The German columns had moved from Perekop to the southern coast of Crimea so quickly that the Soviet headquarters simply did not have time to reorganize the defense along the mountain ridges. The powerful Ishun position, which the Red Army had built all summer and which was supposed to last a month of fighting, collapsed in 3 days. But Sevastopol did not surrender, and this was no accident. The city had been built as a fortress for 100 years. Every hill north of the bay was named after a defense: Bastion 1, Bastion 4, Bastion 6. The Balaklava Valley, the Fedyukiny Heights, Sapun Mountain. These are not just terrain. This is a military archive where every meter is zeroed in, every hollow anticipates a counterattack. The Black Sea Fleet had been stationed here since 1803, and the fortification builders knew their craft. Even back in 1854, during the Crimean War, Russian troops held this city for 11 months against a combined French-British corps, despite the enemy's superiority in artillery. The topography dictated the defense, and the Soviet command understood this. By November of 1941, the Sevastopol Defensive District, its official name, included 3 defense lines. The first, outer line, about 35 kilometers along the front, ran along the ridges of the heights to the north and northeast of the city. The second, main line, another 22 kilometers. The third, inner line, the last line of defense before the port itself. In addition, strong points were built all along the perimeter named after places: Eagle, Volga, Don, Ural. Each was an independent resistance node with machine gun emplacements, dugouts, and ammunition supplies for several days of autonomous combat. The total length of the positions, almost 80 kilometers of trenches, gun emplacements, anti-tank ditches, and abattis. This was not built in a week. According to Soviet documents, the garrison in the autumn of 41 numbered about 52,000 men, 3 divisions of the Coastal Army, 2 Marine regiments, coastal artillery units, and separate battalions of sailors. Not too many for such a front. But they had what most Soviet garrisons lacked: naval coastal artillery, guns ranging from 102 to 305 millimeters, sheltered in concrete casemates, with pre-prepared firing tables for all directions. These batteries were mounted under rocky peaks, with overlapping fields of fire. No attacking column could approach the city along any of the highways without coming under fire from several coastal guns simultaneously. Manstein knew this, and he attacked anyway. The first blow by German and Romanian troops came on the 11th of November, 41. 3 infantry divisions, General Erich Hansen's 54th Army Corps, attacked from the north, along the Belbek River Valley. Another 3 divisions, General Friesner's 30th Corps, pushed from the east across the Fedyukiny Heights. Before the attack, German artillery worked for 12 hours straight. The Soviet positions in the Belbek Valley were literally plowed up. Log dugout roofs were shattered into splinters, trenches collapsed. But the concrete and rock positions of the coastal batteries remained intact. The result of the first assault was simple. The Germans did not break through, not in a week, nor in two. 3 German divisions lost about 7,000 men killed and wounded in 10 days of attacks, without even managing to breach the first line of defense on the northern side. Manstein halted, brought up reserves, and requested additional artillery. On the 17th of December, he launched the second assault, throwing all 7 infantry divisions into action simultaneously. From the air, the 8th Air Corps operated, 500 aircraft. On the 21st of December, the Soviet combat log of the Coastal Army recorded, "The enemy undertook 10 successive attacks on the line of heights 699, Kamishli. All attacks repelled." That was one day. One. The Germans were stopped literally by a hair's breadth. On the 22nd to 24th of December, units of the 30th Corps broke through the second line of defense in the sector of the 35th Coastal Battery, reaching the village of Kamari, 5 kilometers from the shore of the bay. The commander of the Coastal Army, General Ivan Petrov, threw the last reserve into a counterattack. 700 sailors of a separate battalion, armed with carbines and light machine guns, without artillery support, at night. Along the ridge of the Fedyukini Heights, these 700 men halted the German breakthrough for 6 hours, enough time to bring up a regiment from a neighboring sector. 700 sailors, 6 hours. It was enough. It was then that the Black Sea Fleet ensured the transfer of the 386th and 380th Divisions, as well as a number of separate rifle brigades directly under fire. Transport ships entered the northern bay at night, without lights, under the cover of smoke screens, leaving before dawn. The ships suffered losses. German aircraft regularly sank vessels, but the flow did not stop. On the night of the 29th to 30th of December 1941, Soviet troops landed near Feodosia and Kerch, the Kerch-Feodosia amphibious operation. Manstein was forced to withdraw 2 divisions from the Sevastopol front. The second assault faltered. German units fell back to their starting positions. 82 days, 2 major assaults, the city held. The Soviet command drew a simple conclusion from this. Sevastopol could be held, especially since the Crimean front, 3 armies on the Kerch Peninsula under the command of General Kozlov and political commissar Lev Meklis, was soon supposed to go on the offensive and completely unblock the city. Meklis sent reports to the Stavka about successes. Stalin believed the situation in Crimea was under control. He was mistaken. On the 8th of May 1942, Manstein's 11th Army delivered a preemptive strike near Kerch, which entered history as Operation Bustard Hunt. The Crimean front collapsed in 3 days. Manstein lost about 7,000 men. Soviet forces, according to archival data declassified in the 90s, lost over 170,000 men in killed and captured alone, along with all the heavy weaponry of 3 armies. This was not a defeat, it was a catastrophe. Positions that had been built over half a year were abandoned in 3 days. 7,000 against 170,000. Meklis tried to explain the failure with sabotage and the weakness of commanders. Stalin removed him from his post, but this did not bring back the Crimean front, and Manstein was free. Now he could concentrate all his forces against Sevastopol, and he concentrated them. By the start of the third assault, the 25th of May 1942, the German command had assembled a strike force the likes of which had not yet been seen in Crimea. The 11th Army numbered 203,000 men, including 4 Romanian divisions. Air support was provided by the same 8th Air Corps of Richthofen, 600 aircraft, of which about 250 were Junkers 88 and Heinkel 111 dive bombers. The number of sorties on individual days of the assault exceeded 1,000. This is not a misprint. This is the actual figure from German combat logs, confirmed by Soviet archival intelligence summaries. But the main trump card was the artillery. Manstein assembled around Sevastopol a concentration of guns unprecedented on the Eastern Front up to that point. 208 heavy guns with calibers from 105 to 210 millimeters. 94 mortars with calibers from 212 to 600 millimeters, including 5 Karl mortars weighing 124 tons each, firing shells weighing 650 kilos. One Karl mortar could destroy a concrete casemate that had withstood a dozen hits from standard aerial bombs. And one gun, which became the symbol of this siege. Dora, a railway gun with an 800 millimeter caliber, barrel length 21 meters, shell 7 tons. A gun developed specifically for destroying the fortifications of the Maginot Line, which was never breached by direct fire. The transportation of the gun to its position near Bakhchisarai alone took 6 weeks and required 1,500 personnel. To deploy Dora, a special railway branch with double tracks on curves was laid. The gun was turned on curved rails for azimuth aiming. Throughout the entire third assault, Dora fired 48 shots. Its shell could penetrate up to 8 meters of reinforced concrete. 48 shots! A gun the size of a 5-story building, and each shell 7 tons of steel and explosives. The Soviet side at that time had in Sevastopol the coastal army under the command of General Ivan Petrov, about 106,000 men on paper, with roughly 80,000 actually combat-ready. Over the winter and spring, the army had suffered heavy losses in continuous defensive battles. Many units were 1/3 filled with untrained replacements, who received 3 weeks of training right in the rear of the Sevastopol positions. Coastal and field artillery, about 600 guns including Battery 35 and Battery 30, 30-centimeter main-caliber guns capable of covering the entire northern defensive perimeter, and not a single shell above the norm. This is the key figure of the siege. Not the number of attacks, not the losses, supply. The Black Sea Fleet, based in Novorossiysk, delivered supplies to Sevastopol with night raids. No transport could sail by day. The Luftwaffe had achieved complete air supremacy over the Black Sea since May 1942. The 8th Air Corps maintained constant patrols over the sea routes. Pairs of Messerschmitt 109 patrols were on duty at altitudes from 500 to 3,000 meters during daylight hours, and Junkers 88s with high-altitude sights targeted ships at dusk. By June 1942, submarines, destroyer leaders, and individual transports were breaking through to the city under fierce bombing. The leader, Tashkent, on the 26th of June 1942, reached Sevastopol, took on board about 2,000 wounded, and broke back out, receiving 86 direct hits from aerial bombs during the raid. It made it. Not all ships made it. The submarine Sich 209, under the command of Captain Lieutenant Cabo, delivered on the 14th of June 1942 18 tons of ammunition, as much as a heavy battery expended in a few hours of intense combat. 18 tons in one night, 18 tons of shells, and this was already considered a success. On the 27th of May 1942, at 4:15 hours, the artillery preparation for the third assault began. The German heavy guns fired continuously for 5 days before the infantry went on the attack. The German command had not employed such a method either near Odessa, near Tobruk, or even on many sectors of the Eastern Front. Soviet combat logs recorded on individual days 800 to 900 aerial bomb strikes within 24 hours. Infantry positions on the northern side in the Belbek Valley and on the Mackenzievi Mountains turned into a lunar landscape. Log bunkers did not provide protection. Only rock crevices and concrete casemates of coastal batteries offered shelter, but there were few of them. But the garrison held on. On the 7th of June, German infantry went on the offensive along the entire front. The 30th Corps attacked Sapun Ridge. The 54th, the northern side. The 17th Romanian Infantry Division pushed along the coast from the direction of Balaclava. For the first 6 days, the Soviet defense held its lines almost without retreat, at the cost of losses that no one counted in real time because there were not enough officers to keep records. On the 13th of June, Fort Stalin on the northern side fell, a concrete strongpoint held by a company of the 172nd Division of Colonel Laskin. The company held the fort for 3 days after the enemy had broken through to their rear. Without water, The waterline was cut on the very first day. Without ammunition, resupply was impossible. Surviving on hardtack and cartridges taken from the dead. By the time of the breakout, 17 men out of 112 remained alive. 17 out of 112. On the 14th of June, Battery Maxim Gorky 1 fell, the main artillery nest of the northern side. The 305mm turrets of the coastal artillery, sheltered in 8-meter thick concrete, withstood direct hits from the Karls, but they ran out of shells. The crew blew up the guns and left for the southern side, swimming across the northern bay. Swimming. In June. Under fire. By the 20th of June, German units reached the shores of the northern bay. The Soviet positions on the northern side, the coastal cliffs transformed into strongpoints, held out for another 2 days. The crossing of the bay under continuous fire became hell. Most boats, ferries, and improvised means of transport reached the southern shore already with losses. The wounded were evacuated first, but there were incomparably more wounded than there were watercraft. Some people made it by swimming. Others remained on the cliffs until the very end, covering with fire those who were still crossing. On the 22nd of June, the anniversary of the war's beginning, German units captured the Mackenzievi Mountains. 2 days later, they breached the main defensive line near Inkerman. The 30th Corps reached Sapoon Hill and began the assault from the northeast. It was here, on Sapoon Hill, that the Soviet positions held out the longest. It was the highest and most fortified line in the southern sector, from which all approaches to Balaklava and Kadikovka were covered by fire. But it too fell. On the 26th of June, German units reached the outskirts of Sevastopol itself. The defense sectors collapsed one after another. 3 of the 4 Soviet sectors had lost a coherent front line by the end of June. The coastal army fought in isolated pockets, battalions, companies, sometimes platoons, without overall command, without ammunition resupply, without medical evacuation. Hospitals on the southern side were overcrowded 3 to 4 times beyond capacity. In the rock galleries, carved out in peacetime for ammunition storage, lay the wounded. They were placed there because there was no other space. Some of them remained there forever. It is here, at this point, that the main question of Sevastopol's defense arises. What was the headquarters doing? According to declassified Soviet archival documents, published by historian Vladimir Okotnikov in his study The Defense of Sevastopol in 2005, on the 29th of June, 1942, Oktyabrsky sent a report to the Stavka with the following content. Ammunition is running out. Troops have suffered heavy losses. Organizing further resistance is not possible. I request permission to evacuate the command staff. Not the garrison, the command staff. Stalin replied, I permit the evacuation of senior and mid-level command staff, the rest as possible. As possible, in the language of the military bureaucracy of 1942, meant one thing: the rest stay. This decision was not a tactical necessity. It was a choice. The Stavka had no illusions about what would happen to those left behind. German captivity on the Eastern Front in 1942 was not the Geneva Convention. Soviet prisoners of war died of hunger, were shot as politically unreliable, used as labor at German military installations. Everyone knew this. They knew it at the Stavka too. On the night of the 1st to the 2nd of July 1942, the last planes took off from the airfield in the area of Cape Khersones. 6 flying boats and 12 transport Douglases evacuated about 600 officers of the headquarters and high command. Oktyabrsky himself left Sevastopol on the submarine Sh-209, the same one that had delivered ammunition to the city weeks earlier. 600 people. On submarines and planes, on the Khersones Peninsula, between 80 and 100,000 people remained. According to various historians' estimates, the data is still being refined using archives of the Ministry of Defense. Among them, about 30,000 wounded, who could neither be evacuated nor properly treated for several weeks. Some could not move independently. Some died even before the Germans arrived, from wounds, thirst, shock. Ammunition in the central sector, according to the combat log of the 3rd Defense Sector, remained for 3 days at a consumption rate half the norm. Food, the same. The fleet in Novorossiysk received an order: do not send large ships to Sevastopol. Losses from aviation are unacceptable. 80,000 people on the bare cliffs of Cape Khersones without command, without shells, and without a single ship. Organized defense collapsed within 72 hours. Not because courage ran out, because structure vanished. Battalion commanders did not know where divisional headquarters were. Regimental headquarters did not know where army headquarters were. The army headquarters sailed away on a submarine. Major Semyon Chekalin, commander of the 73rd Separate Marine Battalion, left the following entry in his diary, preserved in the Central Archive of the Ministry of Defense, dated the 2nd of July. No contact with the division for 2 days. No orders received. Ammunition running out. Moving towards the sea. Towards the sea, where there were no ships. People went to the shore, to the cliffs of Cape Khersones. They waited for ships that did not come. Some threw themselves into the water, hoping to swim to Soviet vessels that, rumor had it, were supposed to approach at night. The distance to the Caucasian coast, about 200 kilometers, not a single person swam that distance. On the 3rd and 4th of July 1942, mass surrender. General Pyotr Novikov, who assumed command of the coastal army after the departure of Petrov and Oktyabrsky, had no time to organize a defense or coordinate anything. He was captured on the 4th of July. He had been appointed commander 2 days prior. A general, commanding a 100,000-strong garrison for 2 days, and surrendered. According to German and Romanian data, between 100 and 130,000 men were captured. Soviet archival data gives a more modest figure, about 92,000. The discrepancy is easily explained. No one kept precise records. Some were left to die on the cliffs, unregistered. German units were busy convoying columns of prisoners for several days after the official announcement of Sevastopol's capture. 79,000 of them would perish in German captivity by the end of the war. Now let us look at this picture from the side of those who made the decisions. The official Soviet version of events was formed quickly. The garrison fulfilled its duty, pinning down large enemy forces for 250 days. Oktyabrsky was evacuated out of necessity to command the fleet in further operations. Near Novorossiysk, near Tuapse, in the Kerch-Eltigen landing, the Black Sea Fleet Press Bureau prepared the corresponding narrative as early as August 42. Oktyabrsky received the Order of Lenin. Petrov, commander of the Coastal Army, the one who actually commanded the troops all this time, was evacuated at the last moment by plane. He would be reinstated. He would command armies near Novorossiysk in the Crimean Operation of 44, would reach Berlin. But this moment, the 1st of July, the cliffs of Khersones, the abandoned people, would remain an unresolved page. The historical debate about who is to blame, Oktyabrsky, the Stavka, or the general logic of war, continues to this day. Russian military historian Alexei Isayev, in his book Liberation, published in 2006, points out, the key decision that predetermined the catastrophe of the final stage was the refusal to conduct a timely general evacuation. By the end of June, the resources for defense were exhausted, and there was no operational sense in holding the city any longer. The only question was whether the garrison would be withdrawn in an organized manner or abandoned. It was abandoned, not because there was no time, not because there were no ships in principle, because Stalin did not give the order for a general evacuation, and Oktyabrsky did not insist. Archival data on Oktyabrsky's correspondence with the Stavka, partially declassified in 2003 and published in the collection The Black Sea Fleet in the Great Patriotic War, show the issue of evacuating the main body of the garrison was never raised as a priority, not in May nor in early June, when there was still some operational space for maneuver. There is another fact that Soviet textbooks avoided. On the 1st of July, 42, on the same day that Oktyabrsky requested permission for his personal departure, German units had not yet occupied Cape Khersones. There was still space there. There was water. There were cliffs. Soviet torpedo boats could operate under the cover of night. Perhaps, over several night runs, several thousand people could have been evacuated. Not 100,000, that is unrealistic, but several thousand, especially the severely wounded. They did not try. The combat log of the Black Sea Fleet torpedo boats for the 1st through 3rd of July 1942 records, raids to the Khersones lighthouse were carried out for combat purposes, fire support and reconnaissance. There are no evacuation runs in the log. This is not negligence, this is a choice. 2 years later, on the 8th and 9th of May 1944, the 4th Ukrainian Front and units of the Black Sea Fleet liberated Sevastopol during the Crimean offensive operation. The German grouping in Crimea, the 17th Army of General Allmendinger, by that time had suffered heavy losses on other fronts and was cut off from mainland Germany after the Soviet breakthrough in Ukraine. German units fell back to the same Cape Khersones, on the same cliffs, on the same positions where Soviet soldiers had stood 2 years earlier, waiting for ships. This time, ships did not come for the Germans either. The German Navy could not organize a full-scale sea evacuation under the attacks of Soviet aviation and torpedo boats. 17,000 German and Romanian soldiers did manage to break out by sea. The rest, about 30,000, surrendered or perished on the Cape. War does not change its geometry. Only the flags over the cliffs. 100,000 people stood on the shore waiting for ships and did not wait. 600 staff officers sailed away. There was no order for an organized withdrawal. There were no shells. There was no command. There was only water and cliffs, and German divisions closing the ring. None of those who made this decision were held accountable for it, neither before the law nor before history, with the precision it demands. If your grandfathers or great-grandfathers served in the coastal army, held positions near Sevastopol, were in that captivity, or survived the meat grinder of 1942, write about it in the comments. Almost none of these people remain. Every unrecorded story is a story that disappears forever.